by for 10-second countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition.
You probably think that I'm just another ordinary janitor, pushing a broom in a dark and quiet old building, cleaning up after other people's messes, lost in the dreams of another day. You know what? You're right. Sort of. Actually, I'm in disguise. The truth is, I'm from the future. No, it's true. In the future, everybody wears jumpsuits because everything else has gone out of style. Alrighty then, for those of you who don't believe that I'm from the future, then what am I doing with this? This XJ149 molecular deconstruction transmitter assembler unit from the year 2099, eh? Of course, those of you from the 20th century probably see this as a regular remote television control, but I assure you that it is not. Can your remote control do this? Thank you very much. Now, to business. My name is Major Impact, and my real job is as a time-traveling visual historian. I go back in time and absorb and record images of great events in history for future kids in future schools. Today's mission is excellent. Today, I'm exploring the history of America's space program.
I'll meet and travel with the astronauts who have explored outer space, including Wally Schirra, the only astronaut to fly in America's first 3 space programs. I'll see how astronauts eat, sleep, and even play in space. And I'll not only explore how rockets leave the Earth, but I'll see how they come back down.
Well, that's not exactly how a rocket returns to Earth, but doesn't that look cool? Well, you want to help me with my chores? Come on, let's go. There's only one place to begin, and that's the beginning. Man's early attempts to fly came as he simply tried to get off the ground and stay off the ground. Once man learned to fly, he built bigger and better aircraft that took him higher and faster than ever before. Like this jet. And like this rocket, which made it possible to explore outer space. Now, scientists needed to be sure that it would be safe for a living creature to travel in space, so they sent for Ham. Well, just kidding, not Ham. They sent for Ham, the space chimpanzee. The year was 1961 when Ham trained for space travel with 40 other chimps at a place scientists called the Chimp College. On his trip, Ham was launched into space by the Mercury Redstone, the same rocket that would also blast the first American astronaut into space. Ham's health was very important to this first space mission, and he was checked out, just like you and I are on a doctor's visit, by the mission's doctors. Ham's ears were checked. Ham's eyes were checked. Ham's heart rate was checked. And Ham's teeth were checked. And since everything looked a-okay, Ham was ready for his space flight. Ham's trip took him over 156 miles above the Earth, and he traveled over 4,000 miles per hour. That's almost 80 times as fast as your car drives on the highway. Scientists kept a close eye on Ham's condition for the entire flight. 16.5 minutes after blastoff, Ham's capsule was spotted by the USS Donner floating in the Atlantic Ocean, over 400 miles away from where he was launched. When the capsule was opened, Ham was tired, but in fine shape. Project Mercury was America's first step towards putting a man on the moon. Mercury, in Greek mythology, means the messenger of the gods and traveled swiftly between heaven and earth. The goal of Project Mercury was simply to see how a man would do in space. 23 rockets blasted off and 6 astronauts, or star voyagers, that's what the word astronaut really means, traveled in space. The Mercury spacecraft was about 10 feet long and 6.5 feet wide. That's about as tall as a basketball hoop and smaller than most cars. The Mercury Atlas rocket weighed 260,000 pounds and stood over 80 feet high. The original Mercury astronauts, called the Mercury 7, were all only sons, including John Glenn, the very first American to actually orbit the Earth. Between 1961 and 1963, the Mercury astronauts spent a total of over 40 hours in space and completed 34.5 orbits of the Earth. As Alan Shepard, the first American in space, put it,
Roger. Liftoff. And the clock is started.
The Mercury astronauts were given a hero's welcome back on Earth, and the space race had begun!
Boy, all this excitement sure has made me hungry.
Hey, I wonder what it's like to eat in space.
Chowing down in space makes eating anything look like fun, even vegetables. America's second step towards putting a man in space was Project Gemini. Gemini in Greek means twins or two. And in 1965, the Gemini project put 2 astronauts in a single spacecraft into space. The Gemini craft was 20 feet long and 10 feet around and weighed almost twice as much as the Mercury craft. 10 Gemini rockets were launched, and 20 Gemini astronauts spent a combined total of 2,000 man-hours in space. But most important, Gemini 3 marked the first corned beef sandwich in space. And the rest, as we say in the future, was history.
The Gemini Titan rocket, standing over 100 feet high and weighing in at 408,000 pounds, was much larger and heavier than the Mercury rocket. The Gemini astronauts trained hard in the air, on the sea, and on land. The astronauts even trained in a swimming pool to prepare for America's first walk in space, done by astronaut Ed White. In the words of Gemini 10 astronaut John Young, Columbus was right. The world is round. The Gemini program confirmed that spacecrafts could maneuver and dock in space, an essential element to putting a man on the moon.
Apollo in Greek mythology was the god of light. And in 1968, America was at last ready to put a man on the moon with the Apollo space program. Over 20,000 companies, 500,000 people, and more than $45 billion were needed to ultimately put a man on the moon. The Apollo space program was a tremendous success. Apollo capsules like this one made 11 flights and carried 33 astronauts on 6 actual moon landings. 12 star Voyagers roamed for more than 160 hours on the surface of the moon, more than 250,000 miles away.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. These were the words of Neil Armstrong as he became the first man to set foot on the surface of the moon. Together with Buzz Aldrin and Mike Collins,
The Apollo 11 crew blasted off from Earth on July 16, 1969, to travel 1/4 miles to the moon. Over 600 million people, 1/5 of the entire world's population, watched as American astronauts Armstrong and Aldrin became the first human beings to set foot on the moon. The Saturn V rocket towered over the Mercury Atlas and the Gemini Titan. Standing 363 feet high, that's longer than a football field, and weighing over 6.4 million pounds, that's 3,200 tons, the Saturn V rocket measured 33 feet across at the widest point. It took 15 tons of fuel per second to blast the giant Saturn rocket off the launch pad. But after liftoff, in the words of Apollo 7 astronaut Wally Schirra, she rode like a dream. The Apollo program collected rocks on the moon, drove a lunar rover on the moon, and even hit a hole-in-one on the surface of the moon.
Space travel is a lot of hard work. But outer space is also a great place to play and have fun.
Without gravity, you can float around in space and spin and twirl and flip and even bang your head into the wall without hurting you or the wall.
You know what it's like to float in a swimming pool? Well, that's what it's like all the time in space. Imagine the possibilities. just think of the possibilities. Wow. In April of 1981, the first space shuttle, the Columbia, took off from Cape Kennedy, Florida. The space shuttles are the world's first fully reusable space vehicle and come back down to Earth just like an airplane. Each space shuttle is designed to make 100 flights, and at liftoff can weigh up to 4.5 million pounds. That's as much as a small Navy ship.
The space shuttle crew is between 2 and 7 people, with 2 pilots controlling each shuttle during the launch and the landings. The space shuttles also allowed satellites to be launched, recovered, and repaired while in space. And when the space shuttle blasts off, 3 main engines and 2 solid rocket boosters all fire, creating over 6 million pounds of thrust, as much as 30 jumbo jets lined up side by side.
Being from the future, I know what comes next in man's adventures in space. I can't tell you what it will be, but I can give you some hints. It may be the construction of a space station where voyagers can stay in space for long periods of time, carrying out important research. And beyond that, well, maybe a trip to another planet or a visit to a faraway star. Who knows what the future may hold? One thing is certain. Just like the men and women we've seen who've helped make our space program the best in the world, the future of space travel will depend on daring and courageous explorers like you, who will brave the elements of outer space and become a star voyager. Well, I think I've got what I need. I better get back in disguise and clean up my mess. Otherwise, I might get fired. Right. Thank you very much for traveling with me through America's space program. It's been a lot of fun. Roger, and out.